Hey, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Rayge, and we are back today with an Age of X overview in regards to some of the best teams right now that you can use. But more importantly, guys, we actually have evidence and proof that some of the top whales and krakens use these teams to get through. So even if you just needed a fail-safe plan to plan accordingly in terms of which characters and teams to invest in to get Age of X completed, now we have all that information. And again, big shout out to obviously the folks that finished Age of X already with all the tier 20 characters and teams. Now we can start building around that, right? So first and foremost, in case you missed this, available also on the Marvel Strike Force website, where essentially it's the pyramid of how you're able to go through all the chapters. And remember, a lot of the investment is going to be made on the bottleneck tier 20, as you can see, starting off with the city section in the green box, followed by Villain Global and Hero Global in the yellow box. And then last but not least, we also have the last and final chapter of Villain Cosmic and Lilandra and Hero Cosmic characters. So that's why we need to navigate, but at the same time, we still need to understand, which resources to focus in on, what teams work, and now it's been proven, guys. So it's been very interesting to obviously get this information, as well as seeing what's successful and isn't, because a lot of the characters, some of the meta ones, some of the best tunes in the game aren't really as effective, and it's just maybe the way that some of the nodes are designed. They were intended to actually counter said meta, so that's why it was nice to get that clarity from those folks, and just to get that confirmation of what works and doesn't. And now as a player, we can make plans accordingly with our resources on especially knowing which teams and characters actually had success. So I'll start things off here real quick with the city section, because this is probably going to be the main bottleneck for a lot of the folks even starting, myself included. I'm still accumulating right now the skill and mystic gear, but what worked successfully for the folks that finished initially was a 3-piece vigilante team, plus the combination of Oath and Blade being part of that Night Stalker team. Now, a couple of things I've added on here just to help you guys with a little bit of planning and clarity, and again, we'll get a summary of this below as well. So I'm definitely gonna put that actually at the very end here that I can get to you. So vigilante 3-piece and Oath and Blade. You can see here that the obviously Hitmonkey hasn't been released, right, as of the recording of this video. But what has been successful has been Daredevil Modern, in addition to Silver Sable. Some folks brought in Elektra and Punisher. Now, having said that, Elektra was the highly unrecommended character because she wasn't actually providing a lot of value, and Hitmonkey would actually technically be the best third character for this team, as he hasn't been released yet, right? We're suspecting it's gonna be next week. So for folks that want to just get in and have all the resources, technically you can do it with Daredevil Modern, Silver Sable, and Punisher. Where the value add is the fact that you can see Punisher is actually cheaper in the mini uniques for Crimson Gear, as opposed to the other counterparts for the Vigilantes. So just something to consider if that is kind of what you're trying to min-max. On top of that, Blade and Oath being part of the Mystic traits there, they're each 75 apiece. So right off the bat, you need already at least 200 plus pieces of skill to get started if you were to wait for Hitmonkey, and then same with 150 pieces for Mystic, which is what's probably going to be a big bottleneck for the beginning of how this starts off. But this is a team that can't get the job done, and it's because of the Vigilante gaining their benefits as a full team, even if you only have 3 members of the team being utilized. Villain Global, there's a lot of different combinations you can use, but the big go-to one, and the one that actually kind of makes sense, is because we're already using them every single day in raids, is the Orcus Tech team. In addition to that, Apocalypse has been shown to have a lot of value for this, so he can be slotted in for another one of the Orcus team members, depending on which character you want to invest in. Every roster is going to obviously be in a different place. Personally, for myself, I'm probably going to opt out Omega Sentinel or Lady Deathstrike, as Apocalypse kind of fits the mold for both of those. So that's kind of where I'm seeing as a potential option. But obviously, big bottleneck here being the fact that there's actually 4 out of the 5 characters utilized here are going to be tech. So is there a possibility to try some different Villain Global characters so that way you don't have to lean so heavily in tech? 100% for sure. It's just the balancing act of planning these resources, right? And you'll see later on, it's because of this section that you do need quite a bit of tech if you want to push forward. So just something to be mindful of there. And then we obviously have Apocalypse here being a mutant character, so plan accordingly if that's a character you want to bring in. I've heard that he does provide a lot of value though for this section, and he is using the end game in almost all game modes, especially in the arena meta, which is still currently live with him. So something to keep in mind for sure. Next, we got Hero Global, being the Liberty and Liberty team here for respectively War, but as well Emma Frost from the Astro team is also a useful slot-in character here. So we've seen that actually some feedback is that War Machine's not that great here, so he can be definitely a character you don't need to bring in as he's also tech, so you can save on that a bit. But otherwise, Captain America Sam, the new Falcon, as well as Patriot and Peggy Carter, being a mixture of that skill, tech, and bio. So it is nice that they're a little bit more balanced with the Hero Global. And then obviously Emma Frost X-Men being mutant. Hero Global might also have some other options, but you are once again going to get the benefit of war bonuses here. So it kind of makes sense to bring in some characters that actually benefit off of the game mode here. And they're getting these inherent bonuses in the notes, which means they're going to be doing better than expected outside of that game mode. So just something to be mindful of here, and also makes sense because they are one of the newer teams as well. So statistically, they are going to be able to match up against a lot of the foes, and again, having a lot of those war bonuses as well. We have Villains Cosmic being next here. And I call this the end game team because, my goodness, there's so many good characters here, and many of them should, if not already, have been built up and invested in. So this is probably where you're going to gain the most value, but obviously there's still a boatload of resources that we have to be mindful of, right? Shadow King for Mutant, Mystic Gear for Mephisto. We have actually the doubling here of a Bio Gear being utilized for both Null as well as Super Scroll. And then last but not least, we have Thanos Endgame. You could potentially maybe mix and match a character here or there, but otherwise, I heard this section was very, very easy. So obviously then maybe pivot to cheaper resources if you don't need all 5 of these characters, because it is a little bit over the top. But definitely I think Mephisto, Null, and Super Scroll are kind of the ones I would lock in for sure, and Shadow King and Thanos Endgame could be the ones you want to pivot depending on the gear that you want to focus in on. And then last but not least, guys, we have Hero Cosmic here, and a big shout out obviously to the Starjammers, because I feel like they've been trying to just, you know, give us a reason to use them in other game modes to give value, right? Obviously intending for Cosmic Crucible. Lilandra was a great release because many folks have her at 7 yellow, 7 red. You've been following and being engaged with all the events that they released for her. And then the big one here being Odin, also adding a lot of value, making this team in its best form. So could you potentially take out Groot and add another character? It's possible for sure, but I think Starjammers just having that synergy together would make the most sense. What I really like about this mixture of this last final team here is that they're all actually individually at different traits. So we got Bio Groot, Mutant Havoc, Tech Howard, Skill Lilandra, and then Mystic Odin. So it's just a beautiful blend here that you can balance out. And then as promised, guys, last but not least, this is the summary of all the characters in terms of their traits, and kind of based on what I just showed you right there, right? And as you can see here, to start off the city section, you need skill and mystic. That's obviously going to be the starting point. Following that up with tech and mutant, so that's kind of where I would pivot over in terms of resources. But then following that afterwards, global hero, cosmic villain, as well as cosmic hero, they all kind of have a blend across the board, right? So in totality here, assuming you don't make any changes from what I've shown in the teams, we actually do have 7 characters at skill. We have 4 in mystic, 6 in tech, 4 in bio, and 4 in mutant. So the focus definitely is going to be skill and tech characters, especially that second global villain section where you do need quite a bit. That's where I'm thinking we probably maybe need to take out a possible Orcus team member, so that way we can pivot a little bit easier, especially in that section where maybe it's not fully needed for all of the team members plus Apocalypse, right? So there you guys have it. Full breakdown of all the teams that have been successful here in terms of the ones that have already completed Age of X. Do let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Obviously, I'm sure there's going to be other options for sure. But yeah, that's kind of what's worked so far. So we know that with the definitive success rates that this is going to be possible. It's more so now, does this fit with your roster? Does this fit with your game plan on the characters and teams that you would also like to build up for ultimately unlocking Professor Xavier? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for your time as always, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.